Hey everybody, welcome back to Black Lotus, where we talk about all things strange and unusual. And today we're not going to be talking about necessarily strange and unusual stuff. We're just going to be talking about what's going on in the UFO community right now. But anyway, before we get started, hi everybody.
Hello.
How you guys doing?
Doing good. How about you?
Great. How about you?
Great.
Fantastic.
Glad to see Michael Roser's back with us. Yay!
Yeah. Sorry, very busy. Lots of projects on the table. You guys know the half of it. I won't bore everyone, but I'm happy to be here.
So, when are you going out to California with Third Phase of Moon?
That would be a week from tomorrow.
Oh, is it?
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Crept up quickly.
What are you doing out there? I saw that somebody else. I saw Giordano. I can't remember his name. I think he's going to be going out with you guys.
Yes, Rich Giordano from GoofOn will be there, along with Dr. J Radio Live, Michael Schratt, Preston Dennett, including Christopher Peters. There's a whole bunch of people we have lined up to sit in and talk to, both on a formal level and a more friendly personal level, if you will. And what we're doing is essentially filming for several documentaries that are all part of the countdown to disclosure that was released by Third Phase of Moon back in February. What these guys have done is they have a complete vision of something, again, more complete than just that movie. So we're going to be filming for that. We're going to be approaching the public and talking to them at length in respect to everything that's been going on in ufology. And of course, even as Lue Elizondo has said, how important it is for people to be paying attention to this stuff. Just the other day on Dr. J Radio Live show, I couldn't agree with him more. And there were a couple times that I personally reached out, whether it was through certain apps or something along those lines, just to kind of get into a public eye for a minute and ask people what they think about the 180 days to disclosure that we were in for some time. And I'd say at any given time, I'd go through about 40 different people when I sit down to play with this. And out of those 40 people, maybe 2 of them would actually talk to me. And maybe 2 more had heard something or was interested in the subject, but didn't want to talk. And then the rest, I was immediately booted as soon as I asked the question directly to the host. So the whole idea here is, again, to get the public involved and to really talk with them and get their opinion and their views on ufology at large.
Well, that's one of the things that I want to bring up today, and that's, why is it that people are slamming people like Nick Pope and Lue Elizondo, Dr. Stephen Greer? But, regardless of their intentions, they're still opening the eyes of the public, I mean, and I think that that's a good thing.
I would agree with you on that, but it's very much a double-edged sword, wherein you have a figure like Pope, for example, who has some questions about credentials and perhaps what he might have said he did in the Ministry of Defense and, what his actual role was there. And then the other side of the sword, well, he's still a notable name. He's a face out there and people are still listening to him. So therefore we have the result of awareness being spread, even if we have some of these other aspects involved. Every one of those names that you mentioned has the same dynamic, whether it's Lue, whether it's Greer, it doesn't matter. They all have their own character history, if you will. But by and large, if we can get past some of that, and some we need to pay more closely attention to than other aspects, especially in the way of credentials and, people's not necessarily truthfulness, but less in the way of exaggeration about what maybe their role was in some certain element. The more we get down and talk about this, the better. I mean, really, that's the end all of it. If you engage the conversation, negative or positive, it's still an awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you there.
Chuck Bam said disclosure at all costs. And I don't know about all costs, but pretty high up there.
Oh, my goodness, my friend. You're funny.
Nathan Allen says the people that have no idea about space people, not from here. I suppose it'd be easier if I just put it up on the screen so I could read it. Not much. The people that have no idea about space people, not from here, will be the ones that freak out the most. And, you know, I tend to agree with you. On the other hand, you know, we just have the biggest disclosure we've ever had from the government. And the only people who are blinking their eyes at it are people in the UFO community, it seems. It seems to me that, you know, the general masses are like, you know, I mean, after everything they've been through over the past year or so, they're just kind of like, what are the Kardashians doing? You know, I don't think people care that much. I mean, and they won't care until, you know, we have aliens, you know, land on the proverbial White House lawn, you know. And I think that's when they will kind of freak out. Well, not kind of, but I think they'll freak out a lot, actually. But I just read a statistic recently. This what was it, like 65% of people polled believe in UFOs, and that seems pretty incredible to me, because I mean, it wasn't maybe a year or two ago that it just wasn't that popular of a theory.
Did it say how many of that believe that they've been here? Like they're among us?
No, it was just about people who believe that UFOs are here. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're aliens or that they believe that they're aliens, but they do believe that they're UFOs. You know?
Okay.
So,
well, I mean,
I'm actually surprised at that it's as low as it is. I actually expected it to be higher.
really,
I guess
after the
according
UFO
to-
report, yeah.
I still think there are many people who aren't acknowledging this, possibly in the way of their lives being such a distraction, or, you know, something like this isn't impacting them the way we understand that it is actually impacting the collective. These folks may roll around, but as it's been said many times before, this whole 180 days that, you know, we kind of focus on was a very introductory avenue into where we're going to be going next. They know they can't drop it all at once. And that's where perhaps in what Nathan mentioned, everybody would go haywire, because, you know, obviously look at the way that humans deal and adapt to change. They can do it over a period of time much easier and much more effectively, you know, than somebody throwing it down all at once. So perhaps in that mentality, that's what we're actually seeing here. And this wasn't for us. None of this was for us. It was for the general public. It's for the people who are not familiar with this, just to plant the seed.
Let's talk about the UFO report and where we're going to go from here real quick, because I'm kind of the opinion. I mean, I don't know how much you guys know about Project Bluebeam, but I'm kind of the opinion that this report that was released by the DoD may be a setup and preparation for this so-called fake alien invasion that Project Bluebeam is supposed to do.
Interesting.
I said something about that about a year ago.
Or did you? Yeah.
Yep.
But I mean, to me, that just makes sense. That's what they would do, is that they would make a report like this and say, well, we just don't know what they are.
Right.
And then the next thing you know, we're going to have that. Say again.
I said they're making the crafts. So, and I know that for a fact because a friend of mine works within the NASA lines, let's say. And he said that they're replicating the crafts. So if they're replicating the crafts, that's like a heads up right there. That's, to me, like it's going to be a false invasion and going to be blamed. Others are going to be blamed for it, where it's going to be our own.
I
think
wonder
it's for population control.
Yeah. Well, I think they want to see what the panic, how much of a panic it is. But if you stop and think about it, every time that there's a sighting, nobody's panicking. Nobody's panicking like when the War of the World or that story with that one guy was being told over the radio in the 50s, 60s. That Orson Welles. People are reacting like that because so many people have already seen.
Well, it's much more in the mass consciousness in way of a subject. than those days for sure. But what
Yeah.
happens to the rest of us that see this coming? And as soon as, let's say that it does happen tomorrow, and you have 3/4 of the world completely, heels over their head, and then there's another quarter saying, no, we know exactly what this is. What happens to the plan at that point? Could we still truncate it? Would we have time as it was happening?
Well, since we know about it already, since we're already kind of keyed into the idea, I think we're almost like vaccinated against the idea a little bit because we're already thinking about it. But I was thinking about all the the conflict and infighting with disclosure, and it made me think about physics, just like pure energy physics. So disclosure is a really pent up situation. There's a lot of energy just pent up because it's been like 80 years for this one event. So it's a lot of pressure. Like imagine a hose about to burst with pressure. I think that's what disclosure feels like right now. So I don't think we've reached the point where it does explode and there's like a lot of energy, because that hasn't happened yet. But that might explain some of the tension we're seeing between Lue Elizondo and Greer. Although I don't really see Lue Elizondo. I see just Lue Elizondo reacting to Greer. Is Lue Elizondo just directly attracting Greer, or was Greer the one who took the first shot against?
I think it was Greer.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
You called them out.
And now it's just gotten out of hand. I mean, they're attacking each other with little quips all the time, So I just think it's a little ridiculous. In my opinion, I think we need a little more solidarity within the UFO community. And like I said, especially now, with the UFO report coming out and the masses becoming aware of this thing, and the government saying we don't know what they are, but they are there. I think the UFO community needs to step up and say, okay, maybe we don't know what they are, but here's what we think they are, because the government's not going to do that,
Do you see infighting?
What we need to do is say, look at the report that was given to us, basically, and then look what was given to Congress. That was a big difference.
Oh, sure. And I guarantee we're never going to see anything from Congress.
No, but I'm saying if you have that little bit and then you have somebody else that's getting a whole lot more, there's a lot more that's being told. And that means that there's a lot more that's being withheld.
Yeah.
Damien, do you see the infighting as really being between the individual members of ufology, or do you think it's just some figureheads? Just the big talking heads that are actually doing the fighting. But do you see it trickle down?
Yeah, I think I see both happening. Okay. I mean, like we've said before, Michael, you've experienced this infighting with Third Phase of Moon. Because people just can't seem to wrap their heads around the fact that Third Phase Moon made a few mistakes several years ago, more further back than that, and they've since corrected the whole thing. But it's like the people in the UFO community are very, very unforgiving for that kind of thing, and so they're constantly slamming like Third Phase of Moon.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because it's very nearsighted in certain respects. They can't see beyond the infraction, and they're not taking into consideration what the proposed infraction was a result of. And I've said it before. I mean, look at the field at large at that time. The entire arena of ufology, it wasn't as composed as it is today, and it didn't have as many people involved or interested at that time. Look at the world of YouTube, how that was still developing, and they were still, putting bracers in, their actual construct of the core of what YouTube was. So people were getting some of this footage, and they were saying, okay, that's interesting. I don't know what it is, but it looks pretty good. And they put it up. Well, we've all learned, certain things, and we have software that we didn't even have back then in the way of analysis. Look at what Manny from Area 503 does with some of the tools that he has. And, in that respect, people are not taking into consideration, again, the time that these sort of things came out. And they certainly should be focused on the actions taken to correct those accusations, especially in the way of what Third Phase of Moon did. And they got to a point where they just started realizing, if it doesn't look like it should, it can't be there. It doesn't matter if we're going to sit and analyze it. You want to do that? This is me saying this. You want to do that? You can sit in a private room and have at it. But truth of the matter is, if it doesn't look good, then why are we going to show it? So there's enough evidence out there.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, and so I don't get it. So I heard recently that the reason that Lue Elizondo is appearing so often on Fox News is because he is preparing to run a political agenda, and he's going to be running for office. What that office is, I don't know. But he's catering to the conservative Republicans with his views on this. What do you guys think about that?
He's under a narrative. He's told what he can and cannot say. He's told what he can and cannot answer in way of question. At the very end of the day, he doesn't have as much control as he may seem to let on in respect to interviews. But even that being said, is not as much as, possibly he should have. So, again, he has to fit and stick under a specific guideline in way of what he can share. I'm not telling you guys anything you haven't known, but this is something that is repeated throughout his appearances. But he does seem to give as much as he can. But, I'm going on some of his more recent appearances and saying that.
Yeah, he's appeared on CNN as well. So he could be catering to liberals as well. I don't know, but yeah, he's been on Fox a lot. And so it just kind of made me wonder. I mean, I heard this theory a couple of days ago, and I thought, well, it might hold some water. I don't know.
I think the thing that I think is interesting about Lue Elizondo, well, first of all, I'll say I do tend, and I want to, and I tend to believe him, what his claim is. So his claim, Lue Elizondo's claim, he himself says his intentions are pure, they're kind-hearted. He just wants the world to know about disclosure. He's got no hidden agenda, and I want to believe him, and I kind of do. But the second problem is that I remember, unfortunately for Lue Elizondo, he was a professional spy for several decades, and he was a very good spy. The problem is that spies are trained to do specifically to lie to people, to manipulate people. That is literally their job. So he could be being dishonest, and he would be very good at it. And I wouldn't be able to tell because he's a spy. So right. I have to go just on instinct, kind of, and hope that there is no secret agenda, and he just has pure intentions as far as disclosure.
Yeah, I think he does have pure intentions about this. I don't think he's lying about any of this stuff. I really don't. I mean, I think he wants disclosure as much as Stephen Greer does, or any of us for that matter. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. There's times when I find the things that he says kind of suspect. And just like Stephen Greer, I find him very suspect. I like the idea of the whole CE5 thing that he is conducting. On the other hand, these claims that, he's using flares dropped from small airplanes to convince the people that he's, in my opinion, bilking out of a ton of money, but I think their intentions are very clear. And I think that they're all good intentions,
Well, whether they're good or not, I think one of the things that what's going through my mind is they definitely want to be known. They want exposure. They want people to go, oh, I know who that is. Yeah. I know. Oh, I'm going to believe him. I've heard him before. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of it has to do whether he's going to be telling us the truth or not the truth. He wants an audience. Yeah. He wants us to know who he is.
Sure.
Well, look at Hynek, too. He worked for the government at first, too. And then kind of changed.
Right. Welcome to the show is asking about the, disclosure narrative. The suffer emotional disclosure narrative.
I think was it the one where you were saying, what is the impact of hosting a show about disclosure? Is that what the comment said?
No, it says, Ralph, could you comment on your perspective on the current disclosure.
Oh,
narrative.
okay.
Well, he's asked a few questions here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Going back. Yeah. Maybe they all tie in together.
yeah, they do.
So what do you think, Ralph? How would you answer that? How has it affected you?
It hasn't, because I knew what it was we were gonna get, and we got what we thought we were gonna get. So it hasn't really affected me at all.
Yeah.
Do you think it's changed anything?
No,
You don't think it's opened the eyes of some people?
very few. I think. I really don't. I don't think anybody's going to think any different just because the government's now saying it. We were saying it before that. So.
Yeah, well, I know in the UFO community, we weren't surprised by the lack of disclosure. So,
I mean, I'm not entirely sure what you're asking. Welcome to the show. I can perhaps infer something here in the way that these guys are doing. Anytime you present something in the way of disclosure, whether it's in ufology, paranormal, cryptozoology, whatever aspect of these fields, you're taking a chance, you're putting yourself out there, and you don't really know who's watching. It's concerning only to a certain degree, but it is part of the job. And there are some of us, even within our immediate groups, who have experienced things a little bit more intensely than that in way of certain negative attention. Again, we know what we're doing. We know what we've stepped into. We understand what tools we have to work with. And, that's something that you have to accept and swallow at the end of the day. You find different ways to relax, man. You kick back at the end of the night and you find different, unique, and creative ways to kind of unwind and get your mind off of that. But I mean, it does depend how deep you are into this and what sort of information you may have or, maybe at your disposal.
well, see, and that's one of the things that really bugs me about people's views about witness testimonies, for example. I mean, they immediately jump on the whole bandwagon of, CGI or whatever. When people put out video evidence or photograph evidence, I mean, they don't take their time to research it. Now, there's a lot of that out there. I'll grant that, but not all of it is. But people do that anyway. I see this in the Facebook groups all the time, and they're and I don't think that they're necessarily trolling. They just haven't done any real research. Now, people like us have done research into this stuff. I mean, some serious research. And so I think we know what we're talking about.
We would hope so.
I think that's really well said, Damien. And I also, to comment on welcome to the show, some of the points he was bringing up. I do think that disclosure itself could be harmful to certain people. Like if you're already in a very delicate mental state or you're having problems mentally or socially or health-wise, then it could be very traumatic to go through this disclosure thing because it's shifting what you're thinking. Now, me personally, like the other people said, like I've kind of learned about it already, so it's not a big a shock. To me, the effect it has on me personally is I think it helps me because I'm thinking about these ideas and I'm analyzing them, so I'm better prepared for when things go up a notch or something like that.
Yeah.
I
But
think you're right about that, Well, but not only that, but kids too.
kids too, I don't follow.
Yeah, because they're delicate as far as unless things are explained to them too. You could, if they got parents that are close-minded to start with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I have seen at least 2 children's books written specifically about aliens and UFO encounters.
Mhm.
So, because I mean, children, if you try explaining abduction to a child, I mean, that'd be the scariest thing in the world. Because basically, you're telling them that all the scary stories he thinks are make believe, some of them are true. The scariest ones. The worst ones are actually the true ones. So,
Yeah, they're going to think that all the monsters are for real. That they're all
Right.
aliens.
and
Right.
then,
Well,
That was my point.
Yeah.
It goes back to what you were saying, Wild, about how the children are being raised. If the parents don't believe this stuff, they're
Yeah.
certainly not going to impart upon it with their kids. And that brings me to another question here. I've noticed that a lot of religious conservatives are conducting the narrative that aliens and UFOs are demonic.
Oh no, that's terrible.
You know, I mean, why is this? And I'm seeing this a lot, you know, through social media that that the aliens are demons and that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
so
I've got news not to go to church because of that. That and a couple other things.
yeah.
Well,
But
Lue
I just think
Elizondo even
stunts
said it.
He
It's
did.
weird. Yeah, he did. In fact, if you guys watch I think it's The Cosmic Hoax, which is Greer's newest documentary, he points out several things that are, in his opinion, wrong with the narrative, and that was one of them, that aliens are not demons. This is very odd, and I think you're looking at a group of people who are still very much looking at the world through a religious filter, and perhaps to them, this is the easiest explanation. You know, conversely, it may be a word used in some sort of misnomer fashion wherein they're calling it a demon, like oh, you devil, you know what I mean? Something like that. It's not a literal interpretation. It's just, well, maybe these are negative ETs that they're referring to, so it's evil, so therefore it's demonic in a sense. That's the problem with these religious terminologies, and unfortunately, there is still a lot of this in our government and our higher organizations that we do sort of follow behind, and these are the notions that they're guiding themselves with. It's very old world. It's archaic in the way of interpretation, and eventually, I think people will break out of that. But right now, in respect to aliens being demons, number one, I put them in two completely separate categories. Maybe we would see some behavior that was similar in the way of ultra-dimensional beings or something along those lines where they can manipulate the environment, again, poltergeist activity. But I don't, there's no way, especially if you wanted to talk about them as a whole, there's no way that extraterrestrials as a collective are demons.
Right.
I'll just say that.
Right. And I think that this narrative just kind of stunts any kind of growth that the UFO community could have. I mean, it just because I'm of the opinion you can't take all extraterrestrials and wrap them all up with one shiny bow.
That'd be like doing the same thing with human beings. You can't do it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a person's perspective of everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I will say this, which is maybe a little counter to what some other people have said tonight. I do think demonology plays a big role in going forward with ufology. I think it's very important. I think it's a very nuisance topic. But I believe demonology as a whole does describe certain aspects of ufology. But the trouble is you don't want to say that that's all of ufology. But I think there's knowledge there. I think the descriptions of some demons, how they act, things about how to help yourself, how to get help if a demon is hurting you. I do think those things are very important, but we have to put them in the right context of the bigger picture. So I don't want to throw away the term ufology. I don't want to throw away the books written about ufology. But yeah, the trouble is using it as a whole. I don't think it describes everything, which some of you guys have said.
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that religion ought to just stay out of this completely, whether it's Christianity or whatever, I believe that aliens are currently working with the government. That's just my opinion. But what if that's not the case?
Okay.
And what if the aliens do, again, land on the proverbial White House lawn? Now, if they did that, I'm sure that they would want to speak with the president. But who should be the spokesperson for Earth?
Again, should it be the United States? Why? I mean, all the movies portray, the United States president's going to be the one, but why not China?
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. I don't think it should be a politician. I don't think it should be somebody, a leader in the religious world. I'm of the opinion it should just be an average Joe Blow, because they wouldn't necessarily have an agenda.
In a perfect world, you would
many
create
offices above
an
the
organization.
president.
Sorry, Kim, I talked over you. Say it again.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, in a perfect world, we could create an organization comprised of your average Joe, the way you describe it, Damien. And this particular force would be tasked with that exact event. So in the case something like that happened, there would be a collective of, well, let's keep it small. Let's say 15 to 20 people that were elected from different countries. Again, I'm throwing this as an idea out there. It's more of a utopian idea, but I couldn't sit here right now and say that there's one particular person who should represent us if that were ever to go down the way you guys are talking.
I was just gonna say I don't feel it should be the president because he's limited on what he knows to start with. People above him in higher offices know a lot more, and he's only briefed on a certain amount.
That's true. I mean, the reality here is that we know that there are people within our governmental factions that are aware of this phenomenon. They've either interacted or have been debriefed on the history. I mean, again, the reality is that we know that this goes a lot further in way of knowledge and information than we're ever going to find out, at least immediately.
Damien, I think you bring up a good point. You got a lot of thoughts going. So, like, if the others, aliens, I mean the same thing. Sometimes I'll say alien, paranormal stuff, but these aliens, whatever they are, if they do want to make contact with humanity, the question is, should they just talk to one individual or a group of individuals? Well, what I was thinking is that, these things are psychic. I mean, you don't have to send them an email, you don't need their number. So I really think it needs to be a global thing. Like all of us individually, or as many of us as possible, need to start a dialogue with them. And
but isn't that already happening? Isn't that already happening now? I mean, because of the people that have been abducted, they're already communicating with several people. And to the best of our knowledge, none of them are presidents or leaders or whatever. Aren't they already communicating with us, with those that have been abducted?
Right. But I think what he's saying is having something like what would be tantamount to the UN. Am I correct there?
Yeah, like a lot of individuals. I do think it's happening now. Obviously, we have things like CF5. I've heard stories about people who have active conversations with ETs or aliens. But yeah, what I was pointing to is just a larger group of numbers. Like, I think the numbers are fairly low. If you poll the number of people and you say, how many of you believe you're directly psychically talking to an ET? It wouldn't be that high. I think it needs to be higher. Like almost all the planet needs to be having that conversation. Because, like I said, it's easy to do it.
There's so many different ones. There's so many different species that's being spoken to because of the contact of.
I wonder if you could just put out the message for all of them. I mean, they're all psychic. Apparently, a lot of these aliens are psychic. So the thing I'm saying is, like, you don't need anybody's address. You don't need their email. You don't need to talk to their personal assistant. You just think about it or meditate. You could practice CE5 and stuff. But we could send a message to them like, this is what I want to happen. And if they have a wider window, then maybe, it could be like a little democratic a little bit or something.
Well, I wonder especially with the CE5 thing. I mean, who are we communicating with? If there are other species visiting us, who exactly are we communicating with, and what is their agenda?
What's the CE5 thing again? I'm sorry.
Close Encounter of the Fifth Kind, where you actually call upon UFOs to show up.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, so there are apps out there, and there's like free ebooks that will teach you steps, basically meditation steps. I could describe it really quickly if somebody doesn't know exactly how to do it. From what I understand, one way of CE5, which is attracting UFOs to you, is you go out to a field, you make sure there's not a lot of lights or objects the UFO could hit, not a lot of people, so it's not shy. And then you start meditating, and you imagine like a signal coming from your head up to the sky, and you see it physically go out of your head, and you see it just going out to the universe. And you're imagining your position on the planet. You're imagining, I'm in Texas, I'm in Houston, I'm in this field. So you're sending up this very concentrated message. And if you practice and you do this well enough, then you will actually attract UFOs.
Which
Let's
becomes
talk
more.
about.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, go on, please.
I was only going to add, it becomes a physical experience, not just a meditational or internal experience, which is kind of unique about that particular practice. That's all.
Yeah.
Yes, very true. The end result is a physical result that happens.
Yeah. So let's talk about CE5 and specifically about Stephen Greer and the fact that he's really bilking a lot of money out of people. Now, the UFO community has always attracted its fair share of charlatans, and they are out there, most definitely. But I'm seeing a trend where people are pretty much condemning or begrudging people for making money off of the subject, and especially like authors. I know a lot of authors who deal with the paranormal, and there is a lot of research that goes into this stuff. I mean, years and years of research, and it takes a good year to write a book about it that contains, 100,000 words. So it's a lot of work to write and edit it, Why shouldn't they be compensated for their time and their work?
They're putting it out there.
Yeah. Say again, Kimberly?
Experiences as well.
Yeah.
Not everybody's going to have the same one.
I think the only person we should be suspicious of making money from the paranormal are the people that are not being honest. Like, they're just phonies, basically. But if you're being honest, then yeah, you should be able to make money.
I mean, I suppose there's a theory out there that a lot of ufologists never leave Google. And I get that, I understand that. But if you're conducting your own research and you're doing your own investigations, I see no reason why you shouldn't be able to profit from it.
Right.
I agree. And I have a very different opinion than a lot of people do when it comes to Stephen Greer and the way that he's charging people XYZ to go out to the desert and go through this. Here's my thought on this. CE5 as a practice will cost you about, I think, between $10 and $20 if you buy the book online. You can take this under your arm, do it yourself. You're learning what Dr. Stephen Greer is teaching. Now, if you decide to embark on an event wherein maybe there's catering, maybe there's a secured location where nobody, there's no potential for outside distortion, and you're going with somebody, you're going with the creator of the system that you're following, that modality. So you're paying for sort of an entertaining time as well. I mean, being involved in that event with a group of people physically in a location, it's similar to buying a CD or going to the show. You're going to pay 40, 50, 60, 70, whatever, to go and see the show live, but you might pay 10, 20 bucks for the CD. Different experiences, same content.
Yeah.
What bothers me about Stephen Greer is that what he's offering, there is no catering to it. It's a secured location, most definitely, but there is no catering to this. He asked that after people have paid him thousands of dollars, that they bring their own food, their own sleeping bags, tents, whatever, that kind of thing. And so that kind of bugs me a little bit about that, and for the amount of money he's charging, it just seems a little ridiculous to me.
But it's on people with big names, and that's probably the thing too.
Yeah. But the thing that bugs me about people who criticize people that make money off of this is, Stephen Hawking wrote, what was the name of that book? A Brief History of Time.
Yeah.
And he made millions off of this. And nobody begrudged him of that because he did a lot of research into this. But people in the UFO community that write about this stuff, they've done a ton of research too. So why shouldn't they make money? I just don't really understand that whole theory. And it's people in the but that's the thing. It's people in the UFO community that are criticizing it, and I don't understand. I mean,
the same effort that they are.
Once again, I'm sorry.
I said they're not putting in the same effort to do the research and the investigation and the interviews that they are. There's different.
Yeah.
When you put in that amount of work, then you should be compensated.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I just don't really understand why people in the UFO community would disagree with that. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, because I would understand it. Like I said, you know, that a lot of researchers never leave Google. And if you're just parroting what everybody else is saying, I kind of get that. I mean, what's the point of another book about Roswell, really? Unless you have some new information about it, and verifiable information at that. But, you know, I mean, if you're going out and you're doing your own research and you're doing your own investigations into this stuff, then yeah, you should most definitely write a book about it. And
Well,
be paid.
it's also about the way people are making money that I think some people have an issue with. You know, by and large, the outcry is far too loud, and it created somewhat of a din throughout ufology. But you know, if you're withholding evidence of, you know, some great video or some footage or photograph that really, you know, helps us all along on this path, and you're holding it for your personal gain because, you know, you want to put it in an upcoming movie and blah, blah, blah. So you sit on it for a year, 2 years. That's wrong. You know,
Yeah.
you shouldn't be doing something like that. But for you to create the documentary or the video and then, you know, reap or garner some sort of financial gain off of that, you're getting an energy exchange. You might as well have hired an outside editor to do the work. Are people going to come after you, the creator of the documentary, or they're going to come after the editor for making money off it? They're going to come after you. You know, it's that people's view on this is very skewed right now. There's a big difference between doing this to make money and making money because you do it. Huge difference. And people are not finding that dividing line between the two to discern.
I completely agree. I really do. One other thing I want to talk about, speaking of big names in the UFO community, I want to know why it is that the UFO community still accepts Richard Doty. I mean, they view him almost as the poor schmuck who was only doing his job. And whether or not he was only doing his job or not, I mean, the Nazis were only doing their job too. But the fact is, he, you know, virtually ruined Paul Benewitz's life. And he also deceived the UFO community at large. So why is he still accepted in the UFO community so much?
I don't think he is as much as you think so. I think there's a lot of hesitation when it comes to him. But like you say, the example you gave, he was just doing his job, but it was for national security, supposedly. So,
Yeah, but when do you start trusting him?
right.
Exactly. I don't think anybody should trust him. You know, I know he's stepped away from all that stuff, and now he's very interested in UFOs, but that doesn't really forgive him for what he did.
Yeah, but why all of a sudden? I mean, why now? Are we going to believe anything he has to say?
Well, I certainly won't.
Well,
There's a movie for free on YouTube about him called Mirage Men. You can watch it on YouTube. But to give a summary you've seen it? It's really good.
Yeah.
It's really creepy to fall asleep to. That's how I recommend you watch it. Fall asleep to Mirage Men. It'll freak you out. But for the people that haven't heard about his story, Richard Doty, he basically was working for the government, and he was paid to lie to someone who was investigating what he thought was UFOs, but it was actually a military base. And so Richard Doty was paid to throw this guy off the trail. So he kind of ruined his life by feeding into his paranoia that there were UFOs. And now, he does interviews and stuff like that. Like, honestly, this is a little harsh, but the role I see him now is kind of like a freak show, like a ufology freak show. Like, if I were to see him, I don't know him personally, but if I were to see him at a convention, that's how I would feel. Like I'm looking at a freak show. Not him as a person, not him the way he looks or who he is, but just the whole story behind him. It's like a freak show story. I'm sorry, what was that, Tim?
The representation.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is too that even though there are people like Richard Doty doing the things that he's done, or other things that really smear their name, at the end of the day, these are also people who do actually have something. Our job is to try to weed out what's truth and what isn't, and that's an ever constant battle, of course. But we do know that some of these people were involved in certain government branches, and that they did serve time doing X, Y, and Z. there is proof of their involvement in certain events, and to whatever degree, if you want to look at it that way. It's hard to let go of some of these guys. And I think, and I'm not speaking personally, but I think at large, the community is holding on to some of these individuals because they're hoping to actually get to the bottom of something, regardless of what the history was. Is it folly? I don't really know. Time will be the telltale of that, but it's certainly what I've observed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And working where he did with doing what he did, you know that he, okay, I'm pretty sure that he knows a lot more than what's been out there, but what part of that do we believe? Will we grasp and actually believe from him because of it? He could tell us anything. He could say anything, but because of his position.
But how many of us would believe him? You know, I think it comes down to that.
It always comes to external verification. If his story eventually matches up with somebody we already know to be credible, or a group of people still have some aspect that's similar, then that's when people can start looking to the other person, or they would start looking to the other person saying, okay, maybe this is the grain of truth in what he's saying. But it's still, I mean, you're doing ufology archaeology in a certain respect, trying to talk to these guys and, again, weed truth from fiction.
You know, and I suppose we shouldn't necessarily single him out. He is a representative of a lot of people that used to do this kind of thing. They spread disinformation and all that stuff. I mean, it goes back to the days of Project Blue Book and before, you know, so he's certainly not the only one, but I think he's the only one left anyway, that still attends UFO conventions, and he's still listened to by people in the UFO community.
Yeah, an observation that I find is interesting about tonight's discussion is that it is about UFOs and aliens, but really we're viewing it through the human perspective. Like, what we're really doing is we're talking about trustworthiness of individuals in the UFO community, like Lue Elizondo, Richard Doty. We haven't said his name, but Bob Lazar, all these people in ufology. So I think another thing that it makes me think about a skill that's useful to have in these kind of cases when we're evaluating somebody is critical thinking. And critical thinking is something you could read up about, you could practice it, but the way it would play out with these people like in ufology, like Stephen Greer, if I was going to use critical thinking to analyze him, whether he's trustworthy or not, well, I would want to have like concrete evidence of the claims made against him. For instance, people say that he fakes his shows sometimes. Okay, that sounds like a bad claim. But if I think critically, I'm like, okay, what is the evidence presented forward? Like, did a reporter do an expose and they actually have evidence? Or is it just some random person making that claim? You know,
right?
You have to do this kind of critical thinking before you make a decision. And it's okay. Like, a lot of these individuals, I haven't made up my mind on them, you know, like it's still up in the air. I don't know if they're trustworthy or not, but I'm really vigilant. And, you know, if you want to go closer to somebody, then you could step up the critical thinking process and start thinking about them critically. But you don't have to do that for everybody. You could put people in this in-between state where you don't know if to trust them or not.
Well, I think with Lou and Bob, I mean, with Bob and with Stephen Greer, they kind of really put their stuff on the line, being able to lose a lot when they first come out with things.
That's true.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
To me, I think that's a big thing right there. They had a lot to lose.
That's true. That is thinking critically about it. Yeah, that is a fact that makes them seem more believable.
Yeah. I want to break in here with an announcement. First of all, viewers, please like and subscribe and share this around to your own groups or to your friends that are interested in this kind of thing. But also, I wanted to make an announcement that starting next Sunday, we are doing extra content episodes, and they won't be available for everybody. It'll be exclusive for people that subscribe to us on Patreon. And I've dropped a link in the description here. And for only $5 a month, that's what, 16 cents a day, something like that. you can get this extra content through Patreon. And so please do that. And it's only like $5 a month. So, and we also, and if you don't want to make an ongoing commitment to this, a month-to-month commitment, we also have a page over at Buy Me a Coffee, and that's only $5, and it's a one-time deal. But the research and everything, like I said, people that are making money off of this stuff, we are not making any money off of this, and we need to. And I think we deserve it. And so please, if you want to help us out, head on over to Patreon. And what'll happen is these private episodes will be recorded right after we do the Black Lotus live thing. And then it'll be uploaded that night. And we have some amazing people coming up as guests on the show, and they'll be with us too at on the what I'm calling Black Lotus Overtime. So so please do. Anyway, so we're heading up on the hour. Any final thoughts on all this stuff, guys?
I have a question for everybody. Have you guys heard of that new Batman movie?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, apparently it's been delayed. There were some problems on set, so the Batmobile lost the wheel, and then Robin laid an egg.
I knew where this was going.
And the Joker got away, unfortunately.
Damn, wow.
He's still at large. So I could be Batman. Joker's still out there. I could.
Well, you're already an alien. I mean, you're from another planet. So
how do we know Batman isn't?
That's true.
He lives underground.
I like that.
Terry, you've been pretty quiet during this whole thing. What are your thoughts on all this?
Well, a lot of it is, in a lot of ways, it's above my head. I'll be honest with you. But, I think overall, I think the word needs to get out. I think people need to believe that what's going on is true. Now, what these people are getting themselves on TV and they're saying certain things, they may or may not be true. But I think in general, people need to know that we're not alone. And what did we figure out? 35% of people that don't believe in UFOs. I'm not sure why. How could they not? How could they not? It's just an unbelievable thing. And all the people and all the stars and all the planets and everything that's out there, to think that we're the only ones out there, and to think that we're more intelligent than them, that they're not coming here because it's too far away. No, I believe that they've got superior technology. I kind of believe that they started us.
Yeah.
So,
me too.
it's just hard to understand why people don't believe in it. And I think the more exposure that people are getting, they'll come around. I think they're just not believing what they're seeing, believing what they're hearing.
Well, I think it's a lot like what I've always said, and that there's a huge difference between skeptics, healthy skeptics, and debunkers. Mm-hmm. Debunkers are out there to prove that it's wrong.
Right.
And usually what I see from a debunker is that they're not proving anything. They're just saying, it's a hoax. It's all bullshit, but a healthy skeptic would look into the situation. And I think most people don't do that,
Well, and I think that's what most people are doing. No, it can't be. Well, I think people need to open their eyes and, like you're saying, look into it. But I just find it really, really hard to believe that people don't believe.
Yeah.
At least to some extent.
Maybe not their agenda.
What was that, Kimberly?
I said it could be just because it's not their agenda, it's ours at this time.
It could be.
It may be, but you have to consider all the different factors that creates a personality and possibly how they're viewing the world. We've often talked about how you're given a world perception by your parents as soon as you're incarnated, and then that moves on to external figures such as authority or teachers. So you constantly have, at least up to a certain point, all of these outside influences guiding you, giving their perception of the world. And what ends up happening is that you do hold on to some of those aspects as you get older. Some you may reject, but they're, again, a good portion that you hold on to. Some of those may be very limiting in the way that people can think. And that's unfortunately something that will have to be overcome with the individual before they can allow themselves to consider the possibility of something existing outside that particular modality of thought or their paradigm at large. And again, that's just one thing to bring up in the way of, your question as to why people would not even give the possibility with all of the space and all of, the information that we have in way of this topic. Why wouldn't they believe? But again, that's just one thought.
Well, I know, okay, so I'm a teacher of first graders, right? And I get kids coming up to me all the time. Are ghosts real? Are leprechauns real? Are zombies real? I mean, I get them asking me all these questions. Are aliens real? And I'm kind of bound not to really answer some of these things, definitely, but I can always tell them, this is what I think, or this is what I think, but you need to go home and talk to your parents. So yeah, their parents are going to say, no, it's not real, or it is real, or whatever you want to believe. But I know I had one student here this last year that we just had. It was weird because she's telling me what she was seeing, and I swear she was seeing shadow people, or she was seeing ghosts, or she was seeing something, but we could never get a private conversation long enough for me to figure out really what was going on. But she told me, she goes, I can't tell my mom. My mom won't believe me. So I think you're right to some extent, but at the other hand, I do think their own experiences and their own, the things they're seeing on TV and all these other things, I think it does influence them beyond what their parents say.
Kids
Well,
are
definitely.
open-minded because they're so close to the veil to start with. So they don't have anything until the parents start closing them down. Then the dogma starts. And then
Well,
Right.
They're learning everything. Like, everything is new to them, not just ufology. They're learning about the weather, politics, cars, colors. I mean, everything is new for them, so they could take it in easily.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But I was one of those kids, Terry. My mom, I would tell her about the ghost that was in our house, or I would ask her about UFOs and that. And she was a strict non-believer in anything paranormal. But look where I am today.
That's my point.
So
yeah, that's my point.
So I think kids can make up their own minds,
Oh, they do at a certain point. It's actually in the adolescent years. And this is one of the reasons kids become so at unrest during that particular span of time. It's their soul anchoring in. There's more portions of their higher self that is now anchoring in for them to continue on and grow the way they are physically and otherwise. It comes in the way of behavioral change too, or questioning about the world. I mean, we all know that teenagers often ask questions. They also tend to think they know all the answers, but that's also a product of exactly what I'm talking about here. So
I have
open-minded to help the kids.
What was that, Kim?
I said the parents have got to be open-minded to help the kids too.
Yeah,
sure.
I have a last question myself personally. So my good friend Tessa has been talking to me about Starseeds, I think.
Uh-huh.
And I really like her. I met her at a research station. We're good friends. So I don't know much about the topic. My question is, does anybody here know about Starseeds? And can you tell me just a quick definition of what it is or what it means?
Michael, why don't you feel this?
Absolutely. So essentially, the definition of a starseed is someone who is not originally on a spiritual level from this planet. Maybe they came from Andromeda, Sirius, any of these other solar systems that we talk about, Pleiades and so forth. That's where they feel they resonate from. And they're in this body at this point in time, maybe to help along with the planetary shifts and everything that's happening on a conscious level with us right now. Maybe they're here because they're trying something new in the way of experimentation by coming into a human body, holding the resonance of, I'll just use an example, people of Andromeda.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, this has been purported that we're being monitored by certain groups of extraterrestrials because we're actually part of that family on a soul level, or energetically we have a signature that vibrates, and they want to see how that actually interacts with the human body and human energy. That's what they're studying. So a starseed, once again, can be definitely defined by this particular conviction, but also a lot of them tend to be very psychic, the same way that indigo children are. I mean, adults in the same respect, very in tune, very connected, intuitive, and clairvoyant. So yeah, that's the basic definition of a starseed. And there are a lot of people who claim that kind of connection to another world.
I was going to ask you actually if we could equate this with indigo children.
100%. It's one and the same.
Okay.
Well, thank you for that. And you answered my question too. I had a question about star children, but you answered it. So
perfect.
Cool.
My pleasure.
So anyway, yeah, we're up on an hour now. I think we're going to get out of here. But viewers, again, thank you for viewing as always. And again, like, share, subscribe. We could use the numbers.
Yeah, and I would say that I just want to tell everybody, if you really like the show, the best way to see it grow and to see it get better is to join the Patreon, which is $5 a month, and you can see it in the description.
Yeah,
so you should
absolutely.
look into it. Yeah.
So yeah, again, that's going to be starting next Sunday, where we're going to be doing those exclusive episodes. So definitely sign up for it. It'll be worth your time. And like I said, we're going to have a lot of fascinating guests coming up. And so these extra episodes will be more casual and kind of behind the scenes kind of thing. So definitely tune in for that. But anyway, we are going to get out of here. Thank you to the panel, as always. Thanks to Ralph, and thanks to Terry and Wild and Michael and Kimberly. And yeah, as always, it's great to have you guys here.
Thank you. And I want to say hi officially to Terry, because this is the first time we've been on the same stream. So hi. Nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Yes, exactly.
Nice to
I know
see
you guys. You guys just don't know me either.
Right. That's how it usually is.
All right. So until next time, as always, keep thinking and question everything.